The Giannis trade discussion on yesterday's show sparked a lot of interest. So, can the Bucks find a middle ground? And what about an out there trade proposal from Locked On Jazz? We'll dig into that coming up next on today's Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bucks. I'm Justin Garcia, joined as always by Camille Davis. We thank you for making this your first listen of the day. All the everydayers out there who certainly had a lot to say on yesterday's show. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So yesterday, Camille, we ran through the trade proposals that The Athletic put together and that Eric Name did the Lord's work and shot down why these trades are ridiculous and not enough for Giannis. But it seems to have sparked a lot of discourse among Bucks fans that, I don't know, where would you place it in terms of Bucks fans pro or against trading Giannis? It feels like it's 65-35 to me in terms of fans that are against it, and you're starting to feel like, well, it's time. It's time to pivot and move on to something else. Where would you put those numbers?
That feels about right. I was thinking maybe 70-30. I do wonder a lot of times too if some of the people who are talking are more so Giannis fans than Bucks fans, because I do think you have a different mentality of what you're searching for. If you're more a fan of Giannis, that's it, rather than the actual team of the Milwaukee Bucks. But I think maybe like 70-30 I've seen from Bucks fans, but that 30 is very loud. About listen, we need to make sure we don't miss a window. We need to do this while the value is high. And again, I'm on that 70 side of my calculation here.
It's funny you bring that up because I was talking about this with somebody earlier today or Monday as we record this. And I made that same point where I know I mentioned something similar to that on yesterday's show, but I didn't mean it to demean any Bucks fans that are out there that are newer fans. I mean, everybody gets into fandom at a different time in their lives. So it's not to say you're a bad fan because you just joined in 2018. But my point was, this person I was having the conversation with said, I just don't think they'll trade Giannis because I don't think Horst or anybody for that matter wants to be the next Nico Harrison. Like, well, it's not really an apples to apples argument here. I mean, I don't think that's really on the table unless it's a really bad trade and you get matching salary back and, an average draft pick, and that's it. And I don't think a lot of fans, up in arms would be the wrong way to put it, but I think it would be received much better because a lot of these fans, and again, I can't preface this enough, I don't mean this as a knock, a lot of these fans are Giannis fans and not necessarily Bucks fans, that they became fans as this group got better and as Giannis started to blossom, that they don't have quite as much of a history with this group and everything we talked about. Hey, remember, and I saw one of the comments too, I don't want to go back to longing for hope OJ Mayo has a good game today. I remember those days. And I think you have a lot of new fans that have come along with Giannis that they have been Giannis fans versus Bucks fans. So I just don't really see that as one of the potential outcomes, again, unless you trade Giannis and you bring back one guy. Like, say, you make the Paul George trade of, all right, we're getting Paul George and a singular draft pick from the Sixers.
I would be so upset if that was the haul back for Giannis. But no, I mean, that is a very good point about when people came onto the fandom as well, because I remember I was able to sit courtside for a Bucks 76ers game at the Bradley Center for like $75, including tax.
Yeah.
Courtside. Like, I was on camera at certain points as the camera panned, but yeah, it was rough. I mean, that time in Bucks fandom, like, I remember going out to bars and the bars would be playing high school hockey. And I'm like, can you turn the Bucks game on? And they're looking at me like, why would you want me to turn this on in the bar right now? And I think too, if you only think back to the last 6-7 years of the Milwaukee Bucks, it's hard to, it can be easy to forget what it was like before that, unless you're also somebody who's watching a lot of other NBA teams and you spent time this season watching the Wizards or the Jazz or the Hornets or any of these teams, when you're like, they're trying to figure out who on their roster is a cornerstone piece. They're really trying to figure things out. And it can test your love for the game when you have to watch 82 games of a rebuilding team.
I mean, look, to your point about the type of attention this team got, as many who've listened to me on the radio or on this show know, I went to college in lacrosse, and that was a long time ago, Camille. We're talking over 20 years ago that I was in lacrosse. So 7-8 seeds for the Bucks, right? And one of those was the ill-fated 6 seed, I believe, the ill-fated Ray Allen trade, where you went up against the Brooklyn Nets in the first round. And I remember routinely going, same thing. You'd go to bars or other establishments and like, can you put on the Bucks game? And it was, nah, we're good. Like, there's other things. There was more interest in the Minnesota Timberwolves, and granted they were better then, but an out-of-state team, more interest than the Bucks. And that was a big challenge. And you think about the amount of apparel that you did not see throughout the state. I lived in Madison after college. Pretty similar there too. There wasn't that reach of Bucks fans in Madison. As I told them, a lot of people that would come to Wisconsin for the first time or were new to the state of, the Bucks are really a city team, and you have the Brewers and Packers that have statewide appeal. That started to change with the new ownership group, and when they really tried to, let's change the logo, let's get apparel out there, let's make sure this becomes a state team. And oh, by the way, Giannis changed a lot of that as well. But it wasn't pretty in terms of Bucks fans and where you would find them spread out throughout the states. And look, a lot of this, I know, can have the tone of us kind of shaming and talking down to Bucks fans of like, you're not a true fan because you're more of a Giannis guy than a Bucks guy. Look, in fairness, the Bucks did not give people a reason to be hopeful and have this long-standing fandom for 15, 20 years, that it took a player like Giannis to change all that. But that's more the point we have tried to really hammer home is, I don't know that it's as clear a picture of this is what you have to do that a lot of people are trying to convince you of. And I think you can understand why a lot of us would say, I'm not in a hurry to sign up for what it was like before Giannis again.
Yeah, I mean, players like Giannis don't come often. And that's part of like in between why like it was 50 years between championships for the Bucks. When you look at who they had when they won the first one, it was, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Like, you had a generational talent. 50 years later, you have Giannis Antetokounmpo, a generational talent. It's really hard to find those guys, and you might end up in situations where you have good teams, but just can't get over that hump. And I'm just going to be of the mindset that as long as Giannis wants to be in Milwaukee, you continue doing everything you can around him to try to make this a team that can compete, because talent like that does not come often, especially one that's homegrown, has attachments to the city, loves being in Milwaukee, all those other things that come into play when you're a small market team that I just can't get on board of looking to trade him if he's not asking for it, just given how difficult it is to find a Giannis, especially one who means as much as they do to Milwaukee. And last thing I'll say about just how the team has changed, I will say it is a lot easier to wear Bucks gear when it's not red and green all the time. It is a lot easier
not a fan
to
of
wear
the
the gear
Christmas
when it
tree
looks
Bucks
good.
apparel.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's, the Tracy Chapman song and the lyrics there, give me one reason to stay here and I'll turn right back around. I mean, that's where we have always been with Giannis, that he's been pretty clear about that of, I want to compete as long as you're competing, but also making it clear we are trying to compete. And the Bucks have done that. We can criticize and have moves they've made that have not worked out and everything that's put you in this spot, but they're in that spot because they tried and they exhausted resources to make their roster better. And it wasn't good enough, and it has not gone your way in the last 3 years. And now it leads to a very, very interesting offseason for this Bucks team. So can they find a middle ground is the place to really take this next. Camille and I will dig into that conversation coming up after this. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances. Major momentum shifts, can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. If you're looking at which players are showing up in the biggest moments or how could tackling their trends help you build your next bet, you can watch what unfolds to combine live prop bets mid-game based on how the action unfolds. New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. So is there a such thing as a middle ground, Camille? And to me, it boils down to this. You're kind of in the chicken and egg theory here. Because we've talked and will continue to talk throughout this summer, long summer again, of the free agents the Bucks have and the decisions to make there. And guys like Gary Trent Jr., how much you'd love to have him back. Kevin Porter Jr., Jericho Sims, right? You can extend AJ Green. Bobby Portis has a big decision as well. And I'm sure a lot, if not all those guys, are looking at this and saying, well, what's he doing? If he's here, yeah, I'm amenable to it. And I'll take, maybe even you get Gary Trent to take a Bobby Portis deal from a couple of years ago. We'll give you the 120% raise. We promise we'll take care of you next summer. Guys, as we've seen the last few years, are more open to things like that when you have a player like Giannis. That's the other thing you have to keep in mind. That changes with this talk of, we'll trade Giannis and get picks and get other guys. That's what you do. Great. You don't have quite as much leverage and flexibility to talk guys into those types of things. So that could potentially go out the window. And, in the case of some guys, it's going to be interesting because I don't know that we're going to get a clear-cut answer from Giannis of, I want to be here, or he's going to publicly come out and say,
right.
You're going to need to trade me. I don't think it get done here. And that's why we talked about the Instagram post yesterday. I don't think it was really much of anything. But it's going to be interesting to see who's the first guy that says, well, are you going to be here or not? Because I got this offer and I can't really wait much longer. So I'm going to lean towards this.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see that because Giannis is the catalyst. Like if there's no Giannis, again, that's what makes Milwaukee a free agent destination right now. It's a chance to play with Giannis, meaning that there's going to be a chance to compete. And the question becomes like, if you do this, trying to find the middle ground of continue to remain competitive this year, going into next year. I do wonder if the pitch is more so along the lines of, listen, this year we're going to double down on what did work last year. We're going to try to bring back the guys that we know work. We're going to lean into, the point Giannis going forward. But maybe this year, well, not necessarily taking a step back, but it's like this is kind of a reset year. And then next year, we promise you, we're going to try to do a little bit more when we have even more flexibility on the books. I do wonder if that's a way to approach it. I don't know how Giannis would take to that or even how fans are, but I think for the Bucks, that might end up being what middle ground looks like, where it's a year where it's not exactly what you thought it might have been before the Dame injury. But now it's like, we're just trying to work through this year, see how the chips may fall. And then from there, we promise you the next year, we're going to gear up even more.
The funny thing is, and I agree with everything you said. But the funny thing is, this quote unquote middle ground that we perceive, it's where the Bucks were this year. Like the middle ground is basically staying the same and saying, look, in all likelihood, we're probably going to be somewhere around 5th to 7th in the Eastern Conference. Hey, maybe things break right. And we said yesterday's show, I mean, here's one of the other things is your pitch to Giannis is you run the ship, man. And also everything is going to revolve around you, that this could be MVP season incoming for Giannis with the Jokic comps. So maybe things break your way and maybe that's the performance you get and you're a 4 seed, right? But I would assume people are going to have the Bucks penciled into 6th play-in tournament, assuming you keep most of this group together. And, that's what we're going at with middle ground, which I think just kind of speaks to, I don't know, was this group what we thought they were the last 2 years?
I would say that this Bucks club underperformed this year in particular. And again, when you get off to a 2-8 start, you already dug yourself in a hole. And honestly, looking at how the playoff series went against the Pacers, digging yourselves into a hole was the theme throughout that series as well. Like that's the theme of the 2024-25 Bucks season of you got to work really hard because you dug yourself into a hole. Now let's see if you can get out. Again, love the fight that they showed, but that was a recurring theme for him. So, I mean, middle ground for this team, like you mentioned, I think it's between that 5 and 7 seed for them. And coming into the season, if you would have told me, hey, the goal for the Bucks is to make sure that they're in the playoffs. They don't want to fall into the play-in. That's where they're at. I would have been like, really? What in year 2 of Doc with more stability, with Damian, with Giannis, and everything that happened. So I would say this season was a bit of a disappointment, especially because for me, I just wanted them to get out the first round. Like I felt like this team had a second round ceiling, if I'm being honest, where that felt like if you get to the second round, things would really have to break your way for you to advance to the conference finals. So like second round ceiling for this team. So to not even get out the first round again, albeit against a really good Pacers team, one that I have a lot more respect for now than I did even a few weeks ago. Disappointing, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to dwell on it too much because, the ifs and buts line, but I said it towards the end of the season too, there's two things here. If you defend that 4-point play a little differently, you have home court advantage in that series against Indiana. You're the 4 seed. And if you do that and you go even 5-5 your first 10 games versus 2-8, you're playing the Pistons in the first round of the playoffs as a 3 seed and then moving on, hopefully, to take on the Boston Celtics. So it just goes to show you how important every game is. And that's why we say, like, it's not necessarily like winning the division for you. You can't win divisions early in seasons. You hear that more in baseball than any other sport, but you can lose it and you can lose your seeding. And that's what we saw over the course of the year for the Bucks. So a lot of questions, and it's all going to center around Giannis and what he wants to do and what he sees in this group. Because I think you loved what you saw from this group down the stretch, save for the injuries, but the way that they played and the way that everything funneled through Giannis and how they found the right personnel that works there. And I think realistically, you can retain all of those guys. It just. I hate to speak in absolutes, but it's probably not possible if he decides or draws this out and says, I don't know, I got to think about it. So that's the challenge, big challenge, one of them that the Bucks are in for here in this offseason. There's a very interesting trade that we mentioned on yesterday's show that was suggested by David on Locked on Jazz. Which I think caught a lot of attention and raised some eyebrows for the Bucks, and a couple of parallels, or one big parallel that it seems like we're starting to see here from our Wisconsin sports team. So Camille and I will dig into that and take a bounce around the rest of the second round playoff series, which again, for the third consecutive year, the Bucks are not a part of. We'll take a look at that coming up next on Locked on Bucks. And we thank you for making Locked on Bucks your first listen every single day. For your second listen, be sure to check out Locked on NBA Game Night, every game, every night until an NBA champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NBA Game Night on Locked on NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And find Camille on that every Monday night. So Tuesday show is Camille on Locked on NBA Game Nights, and you got 2 series to dig into tonight, Camille. Unfortunately, no Bucks in those, but we see the start of the Celtics and Knicks, and then it felt like Denver just played yesterday, and here they are starting their series against the Oklahoma City Thunder. So, yes, some very intriguing series as we go forward here. I mentioned that trade. We'll get to that in a second, but I do want to say this, especially as the injury report came out on Monday afternoon for game 2 of the Cavs-Pacers series. Boy, it's starting to look like, man, is Cleveland going to be in a big hole with the injury report that they have, and Kenny Atkinson even saying, Evan Mobley, I think, and DeAndre Hunter, both very much questionable to play in game 2 of this series. And now you're faced with the possibility of Indiana going up 2-0 on the Cavaliers before the series shifts back to Indy. So certainly party atmosphere in Indiana right now for the Pacers. And it's probably too early to get into this, Camille, but it did get me wondering, is there something about the state that we're just cursed, where everybody's familiar with you play the Brewers, you beat the Brewers, you're going on to the World Series. I mean, look at this run for the Bucks. You lose in the conference finals in 2019. The Raptors win the NBA championship. You lose in the bubble in 2020. The Miami Heat go on to the NBA finals. You win the championship.
Yeah.
Then you lose to the Celtics in 2022. The Celtics go on to the NBA finals. You lose to the Heat in 2023. The Heat go back to the NBA finals. You lost to the Pacers last year. They only reached the conference finals. But everybody, Joe Mazzulla himself on Locked On Celtics, said that was the toughest opponent that we had in the postseason. And now here we are again. That I know it's very early, Camille. I told you, I don't remember if it was on the show or off the air. I'm convinced the Pacers are beating the Cavs. And boy, depending on that injury report, if it's 2-0, this feels like a 5-game wrap here.
Yeah.
It's starting to feel more and more like, is this the year the Pacers break through and this is their year? And then you're looking at a history of, wow, every year but one, the team that beat the Bucks in this 7-year stretch reached the NBA finals.
Ooh, I know some people take solace in that, where it's like, well, hey, at least we lost to the champions along the way. I do not subscribe to that theory. It just makes me even more agitated. Normally, I'm like, dang, like y'all were that good. But no, it could be. The Bucks really could be. Isn't that a movie too with like Good Luck Chuck or something like? No, not Good Luck Chuck.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that the one where it's like you date someone and then after they dated Chuck, they would get married right after?
I think it was a step beyond date, but yeah.
We got to be PC on the show. We got to be PC on the show. But yeah, the Brewers have shown that, and now the Bucks are seemingly also walking in that lane right now, which, like I said, I know some people, it makes them feel better. For me, it makes me cross my arms and just kind of like pout. Like, I can't believe this is happening again. But no, I don't. I wish I could find some comfort in that. I don't. It just makes me more irritated, Justin.
I was there last year with the Pacers especially. And I remember telling this to a couple people, and even very few people with the Celtics that we did engage with. Not a whole lot of likable people there, Camille. But I remember a few of us on the radio side telling them, go win this thing. Like, that was a hard-fought series. The Bucks gave it everything they could. You outlasted us. You had more options than we did. So go finish the job, especially when you're removed from a championship. Last year, I was not there with Indiana. It was more of the, you have got to be kidding me, 2 years in a row and this friggin' Pacers team, and openly and actively rooting against them, against every team they came across, the Knicks and the Celtics. Although the Celtics was more of the, like, which one of these do I really want here? This year, I've moved past it enough to feel like, you know what? Go do something. Like, just as I've talked about many times, it would be hypocritical for me to say, nope, the Pacers are the one quote unquote smaller market team I don't want to see succeed. That, you know, when we all remember what it was like to win a championship, and hopefully that's not what we're clinging to for 5 more decades, but we remember that feeling when you saw Denver win the title. You felt, if it can't be us, I want it to be a team like that. Indiana's a team like that, even though they've had the Bucks number and a lot of controversy in some of those games. Indiana is one of those teams. Their fans have been through a lot as well. So I've moved past it enough to feel like, you know what, of the groups I'm looking at here, of the Cavs, the Celtics, the Pacers, the Knicks, yeah, I want to see Indiana finish the job here and at least reach the finals.
One day I want to grow up and have that mentality, because I am not there. I'm going, just let a Western Conference team win. Let's go Thunder. Like, let's.
Well, yeah, I'm there, Camille. You know, I want a Western Conference team to win.
I can't
but
even.
Of the four in the
East,
yeah, fine.
To say like, oh, these Eastern, especially because like the Cavs, other Midwest, like Cavs and Pacers are both Central, and it's like, and then it's like the Knicks. All right, the Celtics, nah. I'm struggling watching Celtic City, and it's a great docuseries, but like, I do not like that franchise.
I watched the first 7 episodes, and I have no intention of watching the last 2 because I know it's, 2008 on. Like, yeah, I'm good.
Like, I know I'm good on this, but no, I mean, I get it. And for the Bucks, again, disappointing season, especially with how the injuries played in. But again, we talked about this for years, even when it was Kane and Frank, and like, you need a little luck. And the Pacers seem like they might get some more when it comes to who the Cavs are able to actually put out there on the floor to compete, because they already were without Garland. So now if you also add Mobley and Hunter to that list, like that depth that the Cleveland Cavaliers had is taking a real hit. So like it changes the equation for them.
Got to be healthy, you got to be lucky, and you got to be good. And Bucks had all three of those come together, even though they dealt with injuries. They were lucky that Giannis returned. They were lucky that Kevin Durant's foot was that big. So they were good. They got luck. And they were healthy, too. I know we mentioned Giannis missing 2 games. You missed Dante DiVincenzo. But outside of that, your key guys were there. And that's what Indiana's had the last 2 years as well. Really quickly here, and we should try to get David Locke on a show later on this week to talk through it. But on one of his more recent episodes of Locked On Jazz, which we encourage people to check out, I think it was last Friday's show. He took some mailbag questions, which, by the way, we will get back into once again here in this offseason, probably multiple times. And one of the suggestions was, should the Jazz trade for Damian Lillard? And David made the case, yes, they absolutely should. It's part of the rebuild process. Even if you get Cooper Flag and you win the lottery, you don't have enough to say, we're here, it's time to compete now. And the gist of it was, absolve that contract of Damian Lillard, offload some longer deals that you have, and get assets from the Bucks. In theory, makes a whole lot of sense. The flaw in the logic is, we got a 2031 first rounder and then a 2032 pick swap we can offer you, but that's about it in terms of assets. And, this is all speculation and conjecture, and we would even need to know, or what are the players you're taking back? But even if that's something both sides were amenable to, I just have a hard time saying, for what we said of, finding a middle ground and what are the expectations, this doesn't feel like the group where you say, yep, 2031 pick, let's offload that one as well.
Yeah, and that's where I would come down, where it's like, that's the question I have, is attaching that future first that the Bucks do have access to putting into any trades this season or this offseason and going forward. Do you want to attach that to a Dame contract where, he's coming off the Achilles, so you're putting that on there to get off of that contract? Or would you try to use that draft pick for another possible player to offload in a situation where you can bring back a different value piece there? Because that 2020 or 2031, 32 draft pick that the Bucks are able to put on the table, that's a big one for them. And I'm not as curious to just throw that out there to get off of something like a Damian Lillard contract right now. Now, I'm interested in it, and I would love to talk to Dave about why he thinks that's a great fit for the Jazz even more in depth. But the question for the Bucks is this the way you want to use that asset? Is that the player that you need to attach it to try to make a move that can improve this team for the 2025-26 season?
We kind of tiptoed around this during the regular season, and there was one team that was above the Bucks in terms of what is the best asset out there. But what Phoenix did with their 2031 pick, they turned a really good asset into, that's it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's debatable. The 2031 first round pick that the Bucks own is the most valuable asset that is out there right now, because even, this isn't doom casting and saying Giannis is going to leave. In 2031, Giannis is going to be 36 years old, going on 37. So it's teams saying, if he's not gone, it's going to start to hit a big downturn. And it's been a downturn the last 3 years now, but it's really going to start to decline in 2031, we believe, because of the lack of assets leading up to that. And, maybe a young guy really develops, but that's the pick that we want to bet on. And that's what makes this low key very interesting this summer for the Bucks, is if you get that sign off from Giannis, I don't want to leave, and you talk everybody else, the key guys, Kevin Porter Jr., Gary Trent Jr., the decision with Bobby, assuming you retain a Jericho Sims, you got the bird rights on, and you can and should extend AJ Green. Like, you keep that core together, and then just say, if we attach this to something else, we can bring in another serviceable guy and start to at least get to where we said, well, maybe like 5 through 7 is what the reality is. Well, maybe we can bump it up to, hey, in a perfect world, things break our way, we're the 3rd seed. And then who knows what happens depending on your matchups in the postseason. But that is going to be a very enticing asset and larger discussion that we'll get into in the offseason. It's why I'm not going to say you're in the best spot or one of the best spots, but you're in a much better spot. And, even all the discourse around Kyle Kuzma, neither of us are going to try to say Kyle Kuzma on the court worked out perfectly for the Bucks. A lot of challenges there. Doc Rivers himself even said, wasn't great. He's got to be better, and we think he will be. But if you did not make that trade, that's when you look around and you say, man, it's starting to get really dark pretty early here because you are a second apron team and all the things we said about having a mid-level exception to use and breaking that up between guys and keeping guys. That ain't happening. And it's back to we can pay Gary Trent Jr. 120%. That is it. We can pay these other guys 120%. That is it. So in that sense, you're in a whole lot of trouble. So while it didn't work out on the court, it gave you a lot of flexibility and versatility off to couple with what is potentially a really tasty asset in that 2031 first-round pick.
I think you summed that up perfectly. That asset is extremely important, which is why I've seen a few different trades thrown out there of like, would you attach your 30 or 2031 first to this if this is the end goal, which I think some of those options are interesting. Like I saw one where it's like, would you do Kyle Kuzma and that first for Cam Johnson for the Nets? And it's like, that's like I would actually consider that route because of the player that Cam Johnson is, his age, and kind of fits into this new younger version of the Bucks. But again, you have to be very careful with it because that's the only one you can trade out for that time period. And you want to make sure it's for a move that is going to improve your team this year, or improve your team. I can't see attaching that asset just to do something that does not make you significantly better going forward, just to like, hey, we need let's go Pat Connaughton's contract and attach it. Don't. That's not the route I think that the Bucks should take with this first. But I mean, there's a lot of conversations to have too about the best usage of that asset if they are going to attach it. Question of what should the Bucks be looking for in this off season, and even we've talked about it a bit, but even just going more in depth about the guys on this roster who were like, they have to get these guys back. Like this is the number one priority offseason after Giannis, of course. But these are the guys the Bucks should prioritize and the type of guys that we think would fit in this new idea of point Giannis running this team going forward, which a lot of it, I think, would be what Bucks fans have been saying for some years now, which is a younger, more athletic team around Giannis. So it'd be interesting as we go through the summer and start having more of these conversations about what the next version of the Giannis Bucks could look like, assuming he's still here on the team next year.
A lot to hear back from you guys on. Leave your thoughts in the comments about the middle ground for the Bucks. What is the middle ground if they can find it? Is that the most valuable asset in all of the NBA, the 2031 first-round pick that the Bucks own? And what are some of the things you want to hear from in this very long offseason or hear about? So leave your thoughts in those comments and we'll address. I think we are tentatively slated to get Frank's end-of-season thoughts Thursday night, so that'll probably be Friday's episode to look forward to a little bit later this week. That will do it for today, though. For Camille, I'm Justin. We'll talk with you guys once again tomorrow on Locked On Bucks.